Today's video is going to be a masterclass on filming yourself playing guitar, otherwise known as the guitar playthrough. So you've already put a shitload of effort into making your song the best that it possibly can be. You've already learned your song from start to finish, and now you want to make your video look the best that it possibly can. Well, I got you covered. Whether you're a complete beginner or you've already put out a few guitar playthroughs and you just want to improve the quality, we're going to go over the entire process from start to finish. We're going to start with the filming, which is the camera angles, the lighting, all that fun stuff. We'll go into the editing, and then we're going to go into color grading, special effects, and then exporting it, getting it ready for YouTube. I've already put out a few of these videos, but I've learned so much since the last ones that I've put out, so I'm just going to jam-pack this entire episode with tips, so make sure that you stick around to the end. So if any of that sounds interesting, let's jump right in. So the gear that you're going to need, first off, is a camera. If you can't afford buying an actual camera, that's totally fine. I would say just start with using your phone and download the Blackmagic phone app. It'll give you a lot more customization over your phone camera. And you'll see later on that the lighting actually makes much more of a difference than the camera does. So if you have to start somewhere with investing into this stuff, I would say definitely suggest in some sort of lighting and get the best lights that you possibly can afford. Obviously, there's going to be a drastic difference in quality between your phone camera and an actual camera, but obviously, like I said, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Better to start with lights and shape your image rather than spend all your money on a camera and then have bad lighting. I would suggest getting two at first, just so that you can get some shaping going on. You get your main key light, and then you can get some sort of shaping going on with your secondary light. Also, I would suggest getting some sort of diffusion, especially for your main lighting source. And then you obviously need some sort of tripod to put your camera on or to put your phone camera on. And then if you're using a phone, you need some sort of holder for it. If you do go the camera approach, you're gonna have to go with some sort of lens. And I would suggest, especially at first, starting with a zoom lens with a decent aperture. And then obviously we'll need some sort of program to edit all this footage and to color grade it. I would strongly suggest downloading DaVinci Resolve, as it's a really professional color grading workflow, and there's a free version. Just make sure that if you're using the free version, you're only using 8-bit footage, because if you use anything 10-bit and above, you can only bring in the audio and not the video. Obviously, we don't want that. Now let's go over our S9 camera settings. What you want to do is make sure that you choose your frame rate first. Everything else will fall in line with that. A lot of people choose 30 frames per second. I personally like 24 frames per second more, so I usually go with that. And then you want to make sure that your shutter speed is double that. I love Lumix cameras because they give you the option to shoot in shutter angle. It'll give you a degree of what your shutter speed is. You always want to aim for 180-degree shutter, and this way you don't have to think about it at all. Whatever you set your frame rate to, it'll automatically double it. I also love Lumix for all their exposure tools that they give you for relatively cheap. Obviously, we need a camera that has all of the quality and all of the tools that we need, but without lighting, no matter how good your camera is, it's still gonna look like shit. To prove that the lighting makes the biggest difference out of anything, let me turn off all of these lights using my expensive camera, and I'll use my house lights and we'll see how bad it looks. And now look at this stack of shit. So right now I'm using the same setup and it looks terrible because we haven't been able to shape the light the way that we want to. And this is why lighting is the most important, because even though we're still using the same exact expensive setup, it looks like shit. And that's because we're not shaping it to the way that we want to. So let's go back to normal. I think we can agree this is much better. What we're looking for in our images is to get the most amount of depth and to get the most amount of dimension. And the two ways to get depth and dimension are light and shadow. So as you can notice, by looking at this frame, we have light here, a little bit here, dark. And we have light, and then we have the dark side of my face. Then we have the light side of my face, a little bit of dark here, a little bit of light, and then finally dark again. Really what we're looking for is just the most amount of dimension, and that's one way of getting it. The other way of getting it is, as you can see, that's the corner of my room. We're filming into the corner. And you'll notice that most people will do this because it adds the most depth in the room. If you're filming straight onto the room, it just looks extremely flat. An easy way to just improve your compositions is to film into a corner, because then we get that merging corner, that we get the light side and then we get the dark side. A very easy way to get dimension into your shots is to shoot from the shadow side. What I mean by that is you want to have your light on the opposite side of your camera. It's a little bit different for a talking head situation, so let's jump onto the computer and I'll show you what it looks like with Hank Hill playing the guitar. Sounds ridiculous, but it's gonna make sense. All right, I know this looks absolutely ridiculous, but I promise you, it's the easiest way to explain this. So there's our key light here, this yellow circle. As you can see, I have it right here and the camera is right here on the opposite side. Camera here, key light there. And then you want your subject to be in the middle. That way we're getting all this shadow information here and we're getting these interesting highlights. Same thing here, we're getting the interesting highlights here and the shadow over here. And then look what happens when I move the light to the same side as the camera. Instantly this looks way more flat and not interesting. So just by placing your light in the right spot, we now have a way more interesting shot. Since you can't really see what this hand is doing because the side of the hand is blocking the pick right there, It doesn't make sense to film this angle to get this hand's information. It makes sense to get this hand's information because we can actually see what frets Hank's playing here. Same thing with this shot here. It doesn't look interesting at all because our light is on the same side as the camera. We can tell from the way it's shooting. Where if I were to move it to the left, now we're getting some more dimension and some interest because we're still getting that kind of light, and then whatever is facing the camera has the shadow, making it more interesting. And yeah, that his finger is right through the guitar string. So as I grow more and more and I learn from people on set, I've actually grown out of the whole RGB color lighting quite a bit. You might see like, hey, that's a blue light there, and then there's a yellow light here. What I'm actually using is color temperature. To demonstrate that right now, I have my light at 3800 Kelvin and my camera set to 4000. Normal daylight is 5600. So by moving these around and by changing it in camera, this light back here appears to be blue when really it's at 5600 Kelvin. It's not at 56, it's at 65. But if I go into my white balance here, this looks a lot more white and I look extremely yellow. Just by playing with these color temperatures in camera and in our lights, we can actually just get the illusion of RGB lighting without getting the corniness of it, in my opinion. If you like RGB lighting, totally up to you. In my opinion, it's just, I don't know, it feels like a YouTube video. And I'm trying not to go the YouTube video look when it comes to my videos. I'm trying to go more, I don't know. I'm trying to get better as a camera operator. Just me. I'm also going to go over every angle on this guitar playthrough and show you how I got these shots. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go over lens choice. Lens choice is extremely important because it will really shape the way that your image looks. And to demonstrate that, let me show you what different millimeter lenses look like when filming the guitar. The wider your lens, the more you'll see in your frame, but also the less compression that we're getting. And basically that's because whatever is closest to the camera is going to look like it's very big, and then whatever is further away is going to look like it's smaller. And that's what happens with a wide lens like a 35mm, for example. When we switch to something like an 85mm or a 50, since we're moving the camera further back, it's gonna look like it's closer together than it did on the wider lens. And also by doing this, we're gonna get more separation. And by separation, I mean what's called depth of field. Basically, it's when one thing's in focus and the other thing is not in focus. Whatever angle I'm on, I wanna make sure that it's there for a reason. This specific angle here, I can see what my left hand is doing, but I can't really see what my right hand is doing because the guitar pick is getting blocked by the hand. And just like in this angle here, you can see what my picking hand is doing, but you can't see which notes I'm fretting. So it's really important to choose what's the most important focus in that specific shot. I like to get an even amount of both hands in focus because I'm doing a lot of interesting things with my right hand and with my left. So in order to do that, you choose what's the most important at that angle, and then you make sure that's in focus. So for this specific shot, I have my right hand in focus because it's picking. My left hand is out of focus, purposely. Now that we have the lens choice and the camera angles out of the way, let's go over the camera itself. I understand that everybody has a very different and very unique budget, and there's only so much money you can spend on all this equipment. So let me know in the comments down below the max that you have to spend on all of this, and I'll give you what my suggestion would be given your unique budget. Luckily, I suggest to use manual focus when filming these because we have complete control over where our focus will lie. Autofocus can be very finicky and just jump back and forth, and I really hate the look of people using autofocus on their guitar playthroughs. It looks super mechanical and it looks wrong because it's often just jumping back and forth. And that works out pretty well because with the cheaper alternative cameras, autofocus usually isn't very good, but for this situation, we're gonna be using manual focus anyway, so we can get away with a lot. Luckily for me, I reached out to Panasonic Canada and I said, hey, I'm working on this guitar playthrough tutorial. I really like the S9. And I think that it's a great price to performance camera, especially for anybody trying to get into YouTube or social media. So I asked them to send it to me. So this entire video is shot on the S9, not right now because I had to go back, but all the guitar playthrough is shot on the S9 and their kit lenses. So they gave me the 18 to 40mm kit lens, and they also gave me the 20 to 60mm kit lens. I ended up choosing the 20 to 60 because it has a brighter aperture, thus giving me more light and more depth of field. The way to tell how much light and how much depth of field we're gonna get is by the number on the lens. You'll see an F and then you'll see a number. The lower the number after that F, the more light that we're gonna be able to get into the sensor, and also the more of that blur that we're gonna be able to get. This is super important when you're trying to bring the viewer's attention to a specific hand or a specific part of the image. Having different widths of lenses really gives you different looks and makes your guitar playthrough look a little bit more interesting. I really like Lumix cameras. I use them for everything that I do. This entire channel is run on Lumix cameras. So here's the first shots set up. I'd be right over there. Started with this lamp here. I wanted to use the lamp as a motivated light. A motivated light is just a light that's in the shot that makes it seem like it's lighting everything, but it's actually way not lighting it at all. here's the breakdown of the first shot. So I have my key light right here, and it's lighting this side right here of my body. And as I've mentioned before, you always want to shoot on the shadow side. That will give you the most depth. And then it was feeling way too dark on the other side of my body. So that's why I have this dollar store shower curtain. I use this on every single shoot in one way. I either use it to shoot in front of to get more diffusion from the light, or I'll use it to bounce light off of to get more shadow filled in. And I could just put a light there, but that's just way more expensive. This was $1 or $2, and it works actually better because it covers more of the body. And you can see right here, I have this other light here, and it has a gobo on it, and it's basically creating that shape on the wall. That blue, it looks like it's like trees, but it's actually just something in front of the light. And then I have this light right here, and that's contributing as a backlight. So I'd be sitting right there. For this shot here, we're focusing on both hands at the same time, and in order to make it not look flat, we're doing the same technique where we're shooting into the corner of the room. Since we're not getting the kind of depth of field effect where one hand is more in focus than the other, the way to get a little bit more interest out of the shot is to, instead of shooting straight on into a wall, same thing, shoot into the corner of the room so that at least the composition has a little bit of depth to it, since we can't really play with the focus between both hands. I'm standing there. I always use some sort of marking. It's usually a footstool like that. So key light is always on the opposite side of the camera. So key light's on my right side, camera's on the left. And then I have the window, this one open a bit just so I can get a little bit more exposure on myself. And then this one I have closed off just because it was getting too light back here and I wanted to really be able to see the blue light and everything. And same thing, same exact light setup. I'm using this light right here as my backlight, and I'm actually using this light right here as well, because I noticed I'm getting a bit of that lamp reflection in that right there, in that framed photo. So I thought it'd be cool to as well use this light right here, and to pretend like that light is lighting me. Everything but the key light, and you can see we're getting that motivated light right here. Now we don't get that light right there reflecting. Turn it back on, and now we have all this here, which is nice. That's without the gobo. And right now, all of the light, right now all you're seeing is the backlight that's just out of frame over here, behind me, the lamp, and then this other light right here that's glowing a bit. This is just the blue backlight. This is with no light and just using the window to light me up. And this is what the key light's doing on its own. All right, so for this shot, same situation. We got the key light over here, always on the opposite side of the camera. I'm sitting right here. Same thing, I'm reflecting the light off this piece of board from Dollarama. Honestly, the amount of shit you can do with really cheap equipment really goes a long way. Always a mess of wires, because shit gets hectic. The orange amp I wanted to light up in a specific way. So using that same light, but instead of the gobo, I'm using these little levers here, and they let you shape the light. I have another light here to make it look like this beam of light is actually lighting up the amp, but instead it's really that light, and that light's just kind of lighting up the background to get a little bit of interest and to kind of show the silhouette of the mic right there. And then lastly, I have this little light there. Set to pretty warm, pretty orangey, just to light up my structure shit in the background to get a little bit of a different color. And then I have to lean forward because otherwise you see the light all in the guitar, and that sucks. I could use a CPL filter, but that will just darken everything even more, and I really don't want to do that because the light's at 100%. So does that look without lighting up the amp? And as you can see, we still have that light that's pretending to light it up. Turn that back on. Everything but the key light. So you can see that orange light in the background. Turn the orange light off. Really minimal, but it's doing something. Without that extra light. All right, so you guys did this shot here. Same situation. Got the camera here and the key light on the opposite side. Pretty close to it just because that's all I could really get away with it. But you can see we're still getting the shadows there. And that's all I really care about. Just getting a shadow side, a light side, and you can still see it on the camera there. For this shot, I have this same kind of gobo light going down here to create the window looking shit. Got the key light here, obviously. I've got this backlight here that's just shining down onto the keyboard here with my sample pack tape toys there. Got a little light there just to add a little bit of interest. And then I've got one light there as my backlight, just to get a little bit of the light on the back of my arm, if you can see it. So here we go without the key light. You can see the backlight's really illuminating my arm right there, and a little bit of my shoulder, a little bit of the inside of my arm too. You can see right there. And then that fixture light, it's doing that down there, just add a little bit of interest. We got the little Amaran Ace, that little one, just adding that tiny little thing there. But to me, it adds a nice little color contrast because there's a lot of blue going on over there. And then we got a little bit of that orange. And then if I were to take that off, turn all the interesting lights off, it is just our plain stock look. Now that we have all the footage, let's jump onto the computer and we'll begin the editing process using a free program called DaVinci Resolve. There's a free version and a paid version. I use the paid version, but there's only a few features that you get more out of it. I highly suggest it, but if you're just starting out, definitely go with the free version. It's what Hollywood uses to color grade, and it's what you soon will use too because it's free. The only thing to keep in mind with the free version of DaVinci Resolve is that you can only bring in 8-bit footage. So whatever you're filming, make sure that it's not 10-bit because only the audio will come in, and obviously you don't want that. Now that we have all the footage on the computer, what I do is I go through and I name all of the best takes and I put them in a keepers folder. And then I also add the song, the finished mix or the almost finished mix to the folder as well, just because sometimes in Resolve, it might say that media is offline and you might have to relink it. It's just way easier if it's all put in the same folder. That way you don't have to think about, oh, did I put in that one or this one? All I do is I grab all this video stuff and then I go into Resolve and you can just add it here. It'll say change frame rate and you could hit change, but you never know. Sometimes you make a mistake and one of the clips is like in 30 frames per second and the rest is in 24. I like to shoot in 24. So now I just go through and I make sure that we're all in 24 frames per second. Same thing, 2397. So let's go into project settings and then 2397. Once we have this set, we can't change it. So make sure that you have it right in the first place. That's why I always double check and just don't automatically click OK. So now I take all of these takes as well as the song, and then we'll right click it. We're gonna create a multicam clip. This way, all of our footage is just showing up on one track instead of having like 5 different video tracks over here. We're just gonna have one and then we can change it as we go. So we go create new multicam clip, and then you don't have to worry about any of this. All you have to do is go to angle sync and go to sound. And then you could rename it if you want. I just name it performances and create. And you'll see if we've done it all right, it just syncs automatically, no problems. And then we have right here, this is what a multicam looks like. We can just drag it out over here. What you'll notice is that the screen's blank. It always does this. It's because the audio is on track 1, which is connected to the video. And since there's no video for the audio, we can go to angle 2 and here's our footage. Now, if we want to access all those videos as if they're stacked, what we do is we right click and then we go into open in timeline. As you can see, it only shows the top one. So you have to mute each one to make sure that you're seeing what you want to. So here's where I choose my favorite clip and I decide to color grade that one first. And then I try to match all the other clips to that specific clip. We shot it in log footage, and this gives us a lot more flexibility and dynamic range later. So it looks super gray right now, but as soon as we put a transform onto it, it's gonna be okay. I think this might be my favorite looking shot. So right here is our color page. It's gonna click there. This is a professional color grading workflow. I would suggest just doing it right off the bat because the more you ingrain this in yourself, the more you're like, okay, I started with the right fundamentals. Go right click, and then we're gonna go to add into new group, and then we can name this performances. And to show you what it's doing, right now, notice that we only have 2 dots, clip and timeline. When we right click here, we're gonna go add into new group, and then same thing, performances, same name at least. And now you'll see there's a little paperclip just showing you that they're all within the same group. And you'll notice that we have 2 new dots in here. So what we're gonna do is go to the first one. And this way, since all of our footage is shot in Vlog, let's go into our color space transform. And we only have to do this once. So what I like to do is set it to DaVinci wide gamut for the output. You want to set your input color space and your input gamma. So if you're using Panasonic Vlog, you would use that. This is only if you're shooting in log footage. So if you're using Sony, you would go like S-Log2, S-Log3, whatever. I always suggest doing DaVinci Wide Gamut for the output, and it's just kind of like, it gets the most out of all the color grading tools. If we leave it at Rec 709, it's okay, but it's just not getting enough information. So you'll see that it looks like another form of log footage, and that's because it's in DaVinci Wide Gamut. What we want to do now, go to post group clip here, or if I extend this out, we can see the third dot there. We're gonna add another color space transform. We'll make this DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Wide Intermediate, and then on the output, we're gonna go Rec 709 and Gamma 2.4. You don't really have to know what this means, but all you have to know is that anything on the web is in Gamma 2.4, and Rec 709 is just the color that most screens are calibrated for. What I like to do first is just correct any issues with exposure and with color balance. What I like to do is make sure that down here the vector scope is showing it, and it's just a line right here. You want to make sure that the skin tones are on that line. So we're going a little bit to the left, which means we're a little bit too yellow. So what I'm going to do to correct all of that, let's just right click here. We're going to change the gamma to linear. It's kind of like as if you did it in the real world. For some reason, temperature just doesn't do what you want to do. It doesn't really get the highlights and the shadows. It kind of gets everything in between. So when we switch to gamma linear, our gain knob becomes our offset basically. So now we can just push everything. You'll see the more we push it to the right there, the more we're correcting it, but going bluer. I don't really have to look at the image. I can just kind of pay attention here, and I'm seeing that I'm going a little bit yellow. So let's just push it, and then that should be fine. So I name that my primaries, or just pry. And then if we want to, we can raise the exposure a little bit as well. What you need to know about this page is that lift is our shadows and our darks. Gamma is our midtones basically. Most of the meat of our footage is going to be in the gamma, and then the gain is our highlights. It does function a little bit different when we're in linear, so just keep that in mind. What I'm going to do is pull the shadows up a bit and get a little bit more exposure in there. And you might say it looks a little bit muted, and it does, but I just wanted to bring more of that information back. And then let me bring a little bit of the gamma up as well, just so that I have more room later to crunch it down. All right, cool. That's pretty good right now. Next, let me add a contrast node. What's important to note is that automatically it sets the contrast up here, the pivot point at 0.435. But when you're in DaVinci Wide Gamut, the middle gray, which this is referencing, is actually 335. So this way, when we push our contrast, it'll be in the right spot. That's actually feeling really nice. I don't want to lose too much of the darks and the blacks just yet. Name that cont for contrast. What I like to do first is just color correct and exposure correct, and then I'll go through later and I'll add the general look that I want to add to each of these shots. I like to add glow, and I already used a filter for this, but I want to add just a little bit more glow to this area here. So all I have to do is add that on, and then we can bring up the shine threshold until we start to see something that we like. So that's obviously way too much. We'll dial it back, go to glow alone, just to see what we're grabbing. Let's go to the global blend, before or after. And then if we want to add sharpness and like a little bit of like more meat to the image, if we wanted to go grungy with it, we could bring the shine all the way down, bring the spread all the way down so that we're not actually glowing outwards. We're just adding hecticness. And then go to the add and go soft light. It's like adding detail almost. You know what, I actually like it more the way it's intended to be used. There we go. And now I pop a little bit more. So far we've done, this is before, and this is after. Basically just making the image pop a little bit more and removing a little bit of the yellow. This does look a little bit blue. We could correct it later, but this is actually the color, the fade of my black shirt. It does look like that. So I'm gonna keep it like that. And I'll just rename that glow. We can add what's called halation. And as you see, it kind of adds this, by adding halation, this is kind of emulating what film does. And it's basically adding like a bit of a glow and a little bit of a red glow around high contrast sections. So we can dial that in as well. And if you don't want it, you don't have to. I think it's super popular just because it's trying to emulate what film does, and everybody we want it to look like film. We just don't want to spend film prices. And before we move on, actually, I just want to add something called curves. We can do contrast the way that we did previously, or we can create a new node, which I'll call curves. And then we're just gonna use this section right here to do our contrast. So let me mute that. So what's typical is to make dots at these kind of sections. These are our main sections. And let's begin. See the effect that it's adding? We're bringing up the darks in this area. Can bring up the midtones there, or bring them down. But that's looking really good. And the reason I like using curves more is the contrast is kind of just like, here's your pivot point and that's all you get. When it comes to curves, you can select each part of the image from highlight to shadow. And I really appreciate that. So I typically use curves more than contrast. So maybe let's just get rid of it. So now let's go to the next clip. Now all we have to do to copy the grade is to use the middle mouse. Just click on the middle mouse there. And we got it. I actually don't know how to do it if you don't have a mouse, so you'll have to look that up. And then what we want to do is select our newer clip and then select the older one that we've already color graded. I've already set it up to show both clips, but you'll have to go to split screen and selected clips. And then now we can go later in the video and compare. And they do look pretty similar. I'm still a little too yellow in this one, so let's correct that. And then if you're making any changes in here, it's going to affect the clip that has the red ring around it. So I'm happy with this result. Let's move to the next one. So now that I have all the footage matched, I can go through and create my look that will affect all of them if you want. I like to do it this way just because it's like having a mix bus or a master bus on your color grade. So there's a few different ways we can do it. We can use the lift, gamma, and the gain to create some sort of like off-toning look by basically, you can make the shadows a little bit more teal or whatever color you want to make them. Then make the highlights and the gamma and skin tones something like that. We can use our lift, gamma, and gain to do it, or we can use our curves. Let's get a sort of fade going. So what I like to do, same thing again, create these, and then I want to lift. I personally like lifting my black point, not that far, but I like that, like it looks kind of vintage. That's looking good. And I kind of like where everything else is, to be honest. Now what we can do, let's separate these. And then if you wanted to add some blue into the shadows and if you wanted to do like a typical Hollywood like teal and orange, you'd add a little bit of blue into your shadow. See how it's starting to creep in there? A little bit of green as well, just to give it that teal look. Right around in this area is where we're gonna wanna push some red to get a little bit of orange up in there. And then same thing, the opposite, let's take some blue down. Way too much, obviously. This would be called split toning. So we're kind of just splitting where our highlights and our shadows live. And we're kind of just separating the skin from everything else, basically. The skin and the guitar tone from everything else. And if you wanted more saturation, I wouldn't suggest adding saturation because it does it in a very unnatural looking way. What you want to do is basically add contrast. By adding contrast, we're adding saturation. The more that we push it, the more saturated it looks. Let's add the final stage, and if you use the free version of DaVinci Resolve, you unfortunately don't get film grain, but it does add an awful lot to your image. So what I like to do is zoom in. One of my favorites is to go to 400T. This is kind of my go-to. 400T opacity all the way up, so it looks grungy as hell like that. And then we kind of just play with the grain strength. That's too much for sure. Before, after. And then the good thing about doing everything like that at the end is that now that exact color grade is on all the clips. So let's pretend we're good with these takes. Now what we want to do is take all of the clips. All the clips that were added from our multicam will now be in our original clips folder right there. We want to take all of these, and since we're using them in a multicam, your computer is probably not going to play it back very smoothly, and you may want to do this with the rest of your clips depending on your computer specs. So now what we want to do is select all of the clips, right click, go into proxy media, and then generate proxy media. And basically on the folder that you have all the footage saved, or whichever folder that you have selected in your space up here, it's going to create, actually I should fix this real quick, I almost messed that up. This is where it's going to save your proxies and your cached media if you have any. We could remove it so it's not recording onto the computer, or we can add one. Let's go into the folder that we have all this. F-base playthrough, keepers, and then now it will save it in that folder, all on the same hard drive. This is the smart way to do it, just so that everything's together. Back to proxy media, generate proxy media. All right, cool. Now we have the proxies made. And to turn them on, we can just go into playback, proxy handling, prefer proxies. And you may not notice it, but it's just creating a very low res version of the footage. You might be wondering, why do we have these black bars? It's because I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'm shooting in OpenGate, and OpenGate allows you to get more of the camera sensor, the full camera sensor. Lumix cameras are, for whatever reason, the only brand that do this. So highly suggest it, because it makes cropping for TikTok and Instagram and like vertical stuff way easier. You just get even more footage and it's less congested. So you'll see we have all the proxies created. Should be preferring them, but we're still getting really laggy footage. What we can do is go into project settings. Let's just, for right now, turn it to HD instead of 4K. Not exactly sure why, but DaVinci Resolve 12 is lagging really weirdly when I do the proxies, so I had to disable the proxies and it's actually running smoother. But try it out for yourself, see what works better on your computer. But at least now I can see all of the footage. Switch angle to angle 1. See how this is selected right here? This is going to make sure that every time we click on a new clip, it, as you can see, cuts the audio and video. But I don't want to cut the audio, I just want to do the video, so let's select video only, which is that button right there. So now we can go through and we can either, while playing the video, click on each piece of footage to change the angle, or we can use our keyboard and change it through there. So check this out. Let's start on, say, angle 3. And now it'll play it back with all those cuts. It's super easy, and you can actually go through the entire song and just do like a rough cut like that, and then go through later and then just kind of drag parts out. So what I usually do is, once I have the actual mix down at the bottom, I'm just gonna lock it so that there's nothing that we can do to mess that up. So let me do that, and then I'll come back once I'm all done. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go out of this original clip section, and we're going to take all of the extra clips, all the candy shots and all that stuff, and we're going to apply the grade and put them in the spots that they need to be in. So what I like to do real quick on the clips again, let's go into open timeline. And you can see, even when we have everything cut up, it still goes in and we have all of our clips as one solid clip. I suggest doing it this way because you always have the ease of color grading each clip, as opposed to having to like copy and paste it over every single clip, which is what I mentioned to do the first time I did one of these videos. It's been 2 years, I've learned a lot. Go into the color panel. Let's take our main shot that we liked, quote unquote, the most. We're gonna go into gallery, as you can see right here. Go into gallery, select your power grades, and this is where you can save color grades to save yourself time later in the future. If you're always using the same camera, same lighting and stuff like that, it's at least good. I have a Lumix Start that gives me what it looks like, but it has the CSTs in there, so it looks a little bit weird like that. So we're gonna right click on the image, grab still, and then it creates it right here. To rename it, you have to click below that button right there, the number, and then we can just name it S9 playthrough. And then let's get out of there again by double clicking timeline. And now we can, let's just say, misery signals lead is hilarious. I always do this to myself. Same thing as before, just to keep everything super easy, just right click this, and then we can go add into current group. And then this at least will give us our pre and our post, which is all of the color grading stuff that we did. Now we can go back into the clip here, and then all I have to do is drag the grade into here, and there we are. From that to that. I'm just gonna go through and add all those fun clips, like the basses, the solo chugs, and like the little lead guitars and stuff like that. The misery signals lead, which is hilarious. And I'll see you when I'm done, and we'll move on to the next step. Cool, so now I have all those sections selected, and what I could do as well, if we want it to be organized, but nobody wants that, we can right click, go to clip color right here, and then make it a color. Now they show up physically different. And then to delete things that you don't need, you want to press backspace. If you press delete, it moves everything over. Don't do that unless you want to. Cool. So now we go into the color page and let's select all of those clips that we haven't done yet. We can physically see them. They're quite gray compared to the others. So what I'm going to do is hold Control and then select all of them, and then pressing on my middle mouse button, I can drag everything over, which I really like. I wish every program did that. Relaxing my eyes and looking for the very gray footage. There we go. And now we can right click, do the same thing, add into current group, and at least we have the color down. And then if we go all of these, we can drag and drop our color grade onto all of them. But luckily we have one selection that was our lead guitar outside of the multicam. So I can just middle click that. And then we have our grade. So if we are totally happy with this, which I'm not yet, I'm gonna go through and kind of just finesse everything, because I notice this shot's too bright, this one is a little bit too dark, and this one's like sitting all right, but it needs a little bit more contrast. Now that I've adjusted and watched it a little bit more, I also have a light right here that's kind of not really helping me color grade right now. I'm not doing myself any favors, so keep that in mind. I will go through and just finesse this. So this is what the final edit looks like, and I just want to point out a few things that make the edit even cooler. So as you can see, we have what are called overlays, and this is just like adding digital glitch and stuff like that. And I'm using different composite modes here just to show different ways that you can blend it with the original image. Add ended up looking the best. And then another thing I'm using is just general zooms, and sometimes I find it easier to just put on an adjustment layer. All you really have to do is go into effects, here, and then take an adjustment layer and bring it down. And this is available in the free version as well. And then there's other moments where I'm using something called a zoom blur. So I've color coded those as green. And as you can see, there's effects here. It's called zoom blur. All I really did was I go into my filters here and then zoom blur. You just drag it onto the adjustment layer. And then if you wanted to, you can go to the very beginning of it, go 0, press this to make a keyframe, which is basically automating. Go to the end, press it again, and then go into the middle, and then we can add the zoom effect. So that way it starts off really light, and then by the time it gets to the middle, it's super affected like that. So really just use your own discretion and add a bunch of adjustment layers, different kind of filters, and different kind of overlays, and you can get creative looks. This is like a VCR kind of looking thing, which is under analog damage. By adding these little zoom ins and these little effects in the moments that you feel need it, I just put it over parts where they feel like they're lo-fi, so I'm gonna add some glitch and some grain. I feel like it adds another 5 to 10%. Up to you whether you want to add these in or not. That's just how you do it. What we want to do now, if we're happy with this, we're gonna find the beginning of the song, and then we're gonna press I to signal that this is where the video begins for exporting. Go to the end of the song, press O, and this is where it tells you it's the out point. So I is for in, O is for out, and then we're gonna go down here into our export section. What's important when you're color grading, you want to make sure that you have the proxies off, because it will make it look absolutely destroyed and nobody wants that. You want to color grade it to the full res version. The lucky thing about proxies is that we actually don't have to turn it off. The rendering and the exporting will actually recognize like, hey, let's turn the high res on, and we're not going to render with the proxy version, which is really nice. But you will see one thing I forgot to do, and I often forget to do this. We're still in 1080. So what we really want to do is down here is where our preferences are as well. And then let's go back to 4K, assuming we're going to do 4K. YouTube gives you a better video codec when you do 4K, and I think like 4K is just the standard now. So you're going to choose the file name there. You're going to choose where you want to save it here. File format, you want to do MP4. For 4K, don't do best, you want to go to here, and then the highest that YouTube suggests, I'll leave a link down below if I remember this time, which I don't, is 44,000 kilobits per second. So I would suggest doing this to make sure that YouTube compresses your video the least amount possible. And then if we're good with all that, we've chose our name, selection, where we're going to do it, who cares? You want to press add to render queue, and I haven't chose a spot yet, let's just say whatever. Videos. So we're going to save it there, and all you have to do is press render all. Or actually, I notice sometimes when I press render all and there's only one queued up here, it will actually like export. Say I had extra files over here that I didn't want to use, it will just change the output to over here. or the out point. So I usually have it render to queue twice, have 2 things loaded, and then just go render 1. Thank you so much for watching. If you found any use in this video, please let me know by liking the video and commenting down below. As well, remember, let me know your budget down below and I'll do the best to let you know what I would buy for that budget. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. See ya.